So what is it that you say when a client says, this is the first time I'm hearing of this, after you mentioned it in the previous meetings? Challenging. Hi guys, my name is Deepak Shukla, founder at the Pearl Lemon Group. We're a business growth and development agency based in the UK, USA, as well as serving clients worldwide. And here today, in day number 72, we're here to talk about what you do with clients that seem to just ignore or not hear specific instructions, updates, or frameworks that you give them. But before we get into it, feel free to click the link in the description below to get access to 7 additional strategies that are not shared in this training. And if you need any immediate support with your communication within your team or with your clients, do just get in touch and subscribe if you're getting value from these videos. So look, fundamentally, there's sometimes you'll say stuff to clients about, look, it'll be ready by the 10th, and then it gets to the day after or the 6th, and they'll say, oh, so why isn't it ready yet? So you need to understand why clients say that, because I have had experience of me saying things or hearing things and then forgetting them. So you can, depending upon who the client is, assume they're distracted, not focused. Assume they're distracted and not focused. Okay, why that's useful is, and that's just a good thing to assume, is that you need to be super explicit. Okay, you need to send follow-up emails to reflect instructions. Okay, 4, you need to record all of your client conversations. This is something that comes up that's a challenge sometimes. If you're on someone else's Teams or someone else's Zoom, just say, look, can you come over to my Zoom and let's just do that so I can record the call, so we've got a record of this, and it's really useful for the rest of the team so they can listen in and just hear from you directly. Always ask that. Always ask that. Never come out and say this, then that happened, but you don't have any record of it, because then it's a he said, she said, they said thing, and that's not productive for anybody. So please just record your client conversations, especially within the Pearl Lemon team, guys, because I know sometimes that doesn't happen. Record conversations. It will always help you. Obviously, tell people that they're being recorded, and they'll be fine with it 90% of the time. So assuming they're not distracted, it's assuming a client is distracted and not focused. Just assume that, regardless of the reason why. If you want the reasons why, because they're doing a million things at once, they've got challenges going on at home, in their household, financially, emotionally, pressures at work. There could be, 101 reasons which are never revealed to you. That's the first thing. So when you keep that in mind, it means that you need to be super explicit with any instructions or updates you give them. And to underline that, you can send follow-up emails to reflect your instructions or updates that you've previously regarded. And number 4, you need to record all of your client conversations so you can refer back to it. So these are all of the things that you can do to ultimately prevent clients saying, this is the first time of hearing of this. Okay, so you need to prevent. Ultimately, this is the prevention. Okay, now if you're seeing that happen anyway, we'll talk in terms of dealing with the symptom. So first thing is just to ignore it and ignore it and ignore it and say, oh, I'm so sorry, Frank. I didn't realize that was the case. I didn't realize that that's the case, but not to worry. Here's why it won't affect anything, or here's why we're still going to get the result that you're looking for anyway. So as long, if in these circumstance that you can give a not to worry, it doesn't change anything, it doesn't affect the outcome, then fine. You can just ignore the fact that they have forgotten. Okay, so you can ignore it in the instance that those scenarios are the case, that you think this isn't going to change the outcome. You know what? I'm so sorry. That must be my bad. So you can still say that, and you can still reverse that later, and I'll explain why. But where you think it's safe just to ignore it, then ignore it and say, you know what? This is the first time I'm hearing of this, Deepak. You know what? I'm so sorry, Frank. You know what? I'm so sorry, Frank, but not to worry. This isn't going to change anything. Let me explain why. So that's option 1. Okay. Option 2 is apologize and say you thought you and say ah I thought I mentioned this in our last conversation, but no worries. Let me explain now. Okay, so when you can say that. I thought I mentioned this in our last conversation, but not to worry. This is what it means. So you can say that. Okay. Now, if you have then executed 1 to 5 effectively, you should have a record of what happened. Okay, and then you can review the record to make sure it's so what you need to do when you review a record of what was said, you need to look at what their response was to what you said rather than just what you said, to see if you can see them understanding what's happening. If it doesn't look like they're listening, if it looks like they're distracted, if it's not clear from their response, then the fault is probably yours because you didn't hone in enough on monitoring their responses to see if what you were saying was truly being understood. So you can review the record of that meeting, or discussion, because it's equally the case in your mind it might have been clear, but that doesn't mean anything to whether the prospect thought it was clear. So you need to review the record of that meeting and discussion. So when you have and you can find the evidence, you can send it. You got to send it politely worded. So you need to send a politely worded follow up in the instance that you are able to demonstrate that, because and again, you really want to send the politely worded follow-up provided you do have proof that it was said. In the instance that this is the first time of hearing this, changes the nature of the campaign. So if, for example, you said, okay, so we'll get this to you, we'll get you 5 appointments by next week, we'll get you 5 listings by next week, we'll get you 5 sales by next week. And if they say, this is the first time of hearing this, next week I thought we were going to get everything this Friday. So in that instance, it dramatically affects the outcome of their results. And that's where some of these strategies, as much as they're effective, might not work, because when it massively impacts the challenges of it, and for whatever reason they didn't listen in the last call, you don't have a recorded conversation of it, then it becomes the he said, she said. And in those instances, you need to say or follow the stall or complement and stall a methodology that we referred to back in training number 70. So go back to training number 70, because this is 72. And when you send so you've sending a politely worded follow-up, by the way, is, you know what, Frank, it was bugging me because I could have sworn I told you about this small change. And you know what? I found it. Here it is. I hope this is helpful moving forward. And something to that can be as much as you need to send, or you can develop a shit sandwich, because that's effectively pointing out to a client that they forgot, but you need to put that in the middle because it's a bit negative, and then positives around it. So something positive. Hey, Frank, got some good news to report. By the way, this thing was bugging me. It turns out I did make mention of it. Don't say I did tell you or I told you so or any variation of that. Softly phrase it, saying I was able to find it. This is where we had a discussion around it. I hope this helps clear things up. Meanwhile, I'm off for margaritas because it's that time on a Friday. Looking forward to the weekend. What are you up to? So you could do something like that, okay? And then we'll talk about actually sign-offs. That's something you should definitely consider. And in the instances where it's the first time they're hearing of this, you have mentioned it before, dramatically changes the outcome of the call. Stall, compliment, great question, Frank. Let me have a chat with the team and come back to you by tomorrow on this. And don't worry, regardless of what happens, we're going to figure it out. So stall, compliment, reassure. So in the instances that you can't stall, in the instances that it's just going to be a car crash, you would stall, compliment, reassure. So stall, compliment, and reassure. You know what, Frank? Or compliment, stall, reassure, rather. And give yourself as much time as you can to find the solution, of course. But that's what you want to do. Stall, compliment, stall, reassure. You know what, Frank? That's a really great question. Give me until the end of day tomorrow, and I'll come back to you on this matter specifically. And regardless of what happens, we're going to make things work. So just leave it with me. So stall, compliment, stall, reassure, and sound, but sound reassuring and confident throughout. Okay, and that's what you need to do. Sound reassuring and confident throughout. So there you have it, guys. They are the 9 strategies to manage a client when they say, this is the first time I'm hearing of this, even though you've apparently mentioned it before. If you are getting value from these videos, please do write some of your comments and takeaways in the description below, as well as clicking on the old subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube.